Disco Elysium came out in 2019 and it blew people away. Its writing, world building, RPG elements, and the control of Harry Dubois' life made it stand out at the time and still to this day. I played Disco Elysium a little over a year ago and I really enjoyed my time with that game. I saw room to improve on some gameplay elements, but as far as the world building and the characters, it's hard to find much better than Disco Elysium. And I always knew there was drama surrounding Zaum, the developers of this game, and the aftermath of Disco Elysium, but I never was aware of how much of an actual cluster fuck it turned into until after finishing Disco and learning more. I would recommend the People Make Games video, The Disco Elysium Saga Isn't Done Yet, or just like other material if you want to learn more, or just a quick Google search that says like Disco Elysium drama and you can get probably articles or whatever, anything to read really. There is so much going on and it kind of feels like a never-ending saga at this point. I say all this to say Zero Parades for Dead Spies should not be what is looked at as the Disco Elysium follow-up. It is one of many. New studios have sprung up: Red Info, Summer Eternal, Dark Math Games, and Longdo Games. Lead designer and lead writer Robert Kurvitz, lead artist Alexander Rostov, lead writer Helen Hinderpeer, and more have since left or been thrown into the New Mexico deserts to form their own projects. If you are a fan of Disco Elysium, I will encourage you to look at these other studios and give them just as much of a chance as you would Zaum. That's enough about that though. This video isn't supposed to be about all the noise surrounding Zaum. I'm here to answer a very simple yet important question. Would I recommend you play Zero Parades for Dead Spies? Well, I finished Zero Parades, and now I can say that I would. I think Zero Parades is a very, very good game.
Once knew a spy. She was brilliant, erratic, cursed, an anti-personal mind in human form. Her friends called her Hershel, but to her controllers, she was Cascade.
Your name and your cryptonym. A dead limb twitches.
One by one, she watched her friends go out like distant lights. A disaster untold, a black page in the official records.
The memory hums, an exposed wire.
Reports of how it went down remain contested, inconclusive. All that's certain, it began with a phone call and ended with 6 spies lost. She was recalled. They put her in the freezer. Forever, most thought. Even in those dark days, there were whispers among the lower sublevels, where they keep the true believers. Don't count Cascade out.
In this video, I will give a brief rundown of the plot of Zero Parades, but I'm not going to offer up any story beats or spoilers, opposed from what you may be able to gather from looking at the gameplay on display here. All footage will be from the first 2 days, aside from moments where I need to speak on something specific. Even then, I'll make sure it doesn't spoil any narrative beats. Similarly to Harry Dubois at the start of Disco, in Zero Parades you begin by trying to piece together who you are and what is going on. You learn your name's Hershel Wilk, also known as Cascade, a spy who after a failed operation was put on ice for 5 years, and that still clings in her mind, specifically the people she let down. Compared to Harry, I found Cascade to be less overtly sad, or maybe pathetic might be a better word, especially when your first impression of Harry is him face down, ass up in his underwear after a big stupa. Cascade opens slapping herself back into reality and immediately jumps into an investigation. A difference you'll notice from the start is the partner dynamic. As in Zero Parades, your Kim is drooling out of his mouth in a vegetative state, so the best person equipped to really catch you up to speed is worthless. So you're mostly left to figure out your own shit by yourself, while also learning about the people of this town, Portofino, and the world surrounding it, which, of course, in similar fashion to Disco Elysium, is a very crushing world. Characters are grounded to the reality of Portofino, and whether they're kids being propagandized by cartoons, snobs that look down on anyone, or people invested in knowing the scene.
Nothing's wrong with crop tops, it's all to do with belly buttons. In the current year of 96, the scene has deemed them out.
Portofino is filled with characters that have interesting stories and opinions, And if Cascade wants to have a shot at finishing her own mission, she'll have to listen to practically all of them. From my point of view, Disco Elysium was funny, but it was also surrounded by an ever-consuming aroma of sadness. Here, Cascade does have that same baggage that weighs her down like Harry, but I didn't find her being a fool as much. Now, part of that came from what I've learned from Disco, and I was more thoughtful when it came to like push and pull in conversations. I also think Harry as a character was written to just be crafted more as an outlandish character than Cascade, if that is what you wanted out of him. If there still is humor, it just comes from the supporting cast, which has a collection of characters, and less from Hershel. So many of these people will stick in my mind. A small example is this CD vendor, Petre. Within the first conversation with him, I was like, yep, this is a character that feels like a Zaum character. His snobby arrogance with these things called isotones, which are basically one-time use CDs, felt so real in a way that someone like this would 100% exist if isotones were actually real.
But I would sooner molest myself than an isotone XR disc.
The narration this time around is done by Boo Miller, and every sentence feels somewhat nasty. If the narration in Disco Elysium felt more cosmic and haunting, this time the narration is like grimy and back alley feeling. It took a while to get used to because the narration done by Linville Brown was incredible in Disco, but Boo does a phenomenal job here and felt like a great fit for Zero Parades.
The folder shuts itself with a tiny sigh. Hold. More secrets to consume. Very personal ones. Yum yum.
I found Zero Parades to be a very compelling story, and Cascade as a character will likely stick around with me just as much as Harry Dubois was. Opinion on this will widely vary depending on how you choose to play as Cascade. For me, she ended up as a character who was reflective, introspective, haunted, and trying to shake off a past that gave her a sense of being cursed, highly competent, and highly traumatized. Unlike Harry, who was forgetful of his past, instead Cascade battles between acknowledging it or repressing it down. Zaum, in my opinion, still has the talent to weave incredible narratives, and my expectations were exceeded here. You know, it made me piss, shit, cry, and cum, and that's what you want out of a good story. All fluid leaking out of all pores. And I was leaky.
Eaves are beginning to rise. The air itself grows heavy with past sensations. Pain. No. Keep away. This will definitely hurt. Estimated duration. Eternal.
The gameplay experience is very similar to Disco Elysium. You'll explore Portaferio, whether through following a lead or just out of curiosity, meeting someone, engaging in a conversation to learn about them, their views, maybe help them out. These conversations can last anywhere from like 10 minutes upwards to like 30 minutes, and I found them just as engaging here. I never felt completely lost, and when I was about to feel lost, I'd always have one more thing I knew to do, and usually when I did that thing, that'll be the thing that progressed me through. So I always had things to keep me going forward and conversations to jump into as soon as one day ended and I began another. If anything, it felt overwhelming at times, especially around days 4 to 6. I was making big plot advancements while also having small quests that I was still working on because I failed a roll like 3 days in a row. Fuck you, Kurt.
Good to see you on the scene again.
Saving also is more forgiving here, which I appreciate. Disco, I had some moments of losing a fair bit of time that did cross into like, yeah, the death was funny, but it's also kind of annoying to lose that amount of time. Where in Zero Parades, I died twice, and both instances, I lost no time. On the flippity flip, Disco's world felt more grueling to live in. Here in Portaferio, the money is given too loosely and the risk of death is rarely present. A health bar is replaced with 3 new bars, fatigue, anxiety, and delirium. As those increase, you'll hit punishment milestones. And if you let them max out, you'll have to lower a skill. Lowering a skill level doesn't add the same stress that comes from life or death. I mismanaged myself to points where I was struggling to find a way to survive by the end of the night in Disco. My deaths in this game were the equivalent of me driving on a glass bridge, thinking it was concrete, and by the time I saw the cracks below, it was too late, and I could only blame myself for doing something so incredibly stupid. I appreciate it being far more forgiving at times, but I also missed wondering if I would even be able to survive into the next day. For me, in my experience, all the high pressure moments all came from main story related events, and those instances it does work. I just wanted to struggle more when it came to the day-to-day living here. And you're not living in a mansion or anything, But I was living pretty luxuriously. I was putting posters up in my room. I was always spending money because I knew I'd always make money. A new element is these like time freeze moments where you have to make key decisions, sometimes multiple in a row. This felt like a way of adding action while not sacrificing the way these games are designed to play, and I welcome them as an addition. If you ask me, this is the best addition in the game, especially like some of the moments that happen later on are hype, mate. The hype is hell. I love the freezing time mechanic. It's like a great addition to this formula. But when it comes to character building, just like in Disco, you will pick the principles you want to dictate your character. Zero Parades offers 15 different skills broken down into faculty of option, relation, and intellect. It's 9 less skills overall than Disco Elysium. If you ask me, physique and motorics got combined into the faculty of action, but there's kind of like a shifting of the board going around. I didn't find myself missing a specific skill, but I do think Zero Parade's mechanics can be gamified really easily with clothing stats relating to the skills. So like if you want to pass a roll, it can become as simple as throwing on all the clothes you have related to the skill, making something quickly jump from 8% odds to 40, even in the 90s. Sometimes it can be extreme jumps, especially because you can also exert yourself to add even more of a bonus. Out of skills I barely invested in, but I would pass easily because it was deeper in the game. I had a ton of clothing options that would provide bonuses for stats I didn't even care about. It takes all the stress out of the rolls, and it becomes something that you willingly have to kind of choose to not abuse, because once you figure it out, there's no reason to not do that. By day 7, the only roles that ever really caused issues is ones that came as a surprise to me. Maybe with slightly more skills, this would be less of an issue because the clothing options would be spread out a little more. But I think this is kind of like a fundamental way that I wish got tweaked a little bit. The bonuses are also good, but I kind of think there should have been a different way to incorporate it that was less exploitable. Still, the skills all felt warranted, and they were either helpful or funny and useless, just how I like them. I gravitated towards personalism, entanglement, records, and sensors with a side of statehood. I still think Inland Empire is the goated skill between both games, but Zero Parade's entanglement captures it decently well. Overall, if you enjoy how Disco played, then I think you'll enjoy it here. Not as difficult, but the building out of conditions, leveling up skills, and new time freeze mechanic all made for a fun loop. There's also some pretty wacky conditions, so if you want to add some challenge or just be a goofball, I won't spoil them, but yeah, I'd advise you spend all your skill points early on in the conditions category so you can equip as many of those as possible. Characters as well as the narrator will go in and out of having voice lines. It is something I found very jarring and did slightly annoy me, especially because the performances were good and I wanted more of them. I would have happily been okay with a delay if it meant all the lines would be spoken. A character like Boatman felt completely neutered because he spoke about 10% of his lines for having just finished the game. I don't even know what he sounds like. There were also small stutters consistently. I had a buzzing noise that came from an intercom. It wouldn't go away even when I left the building area. It replaced the sound of the rain from outside. Once I went to the main menu and reloaded, everything was back to normal. I also had a dice roll screen that persisted in every conversation. I fixed that the same way. I had my game freeze up. I couldn't move, only could look at menus. This resulted in me losing 14 minutes of progress, and that was like the most severe bug that I encountered. Unfortunately, Zero Parades is a pretty buggy experience. It's never a huge holdup most of the time, but it's ever present enough that it did have a negative impact on my experience. I also saw Mortismo mention in his review that a glossary would be nice, and I could not agree more. In most games, I do not care for a glossary at all, but because of how story-centric and how much information is getting thrown at you, a glossary feels almost ridiculous to not include. I think people have greatly appreciated one as a way to kind of keep grips on all the information you are gathering during this experience. I'm happy to report that 2026 has delivered another banger soundtrack. Fernando Cabrera is able to capture the same energy that came from Sea Power's soundtrack with Disco Elysium while implementing a noir spy feel to every track that gives that haunting feeling that makes me want to stew in a dark room twiddling with my thumbs. I had a feeling I'd love this soundtrack, but it surpassed my expectations. It's incredible. I'll put it like 1A, 1B with Disco Elysium. They both, Sea Power, Fernando Cabrera, they can make banger soundtracks, okay? I imagine Zero Parade's core audience will have already made their minds up on whether they want to jump in, and a lot of that is going to be stemming from Zaum's corporate failures. I'm not here to tell you where you want to draw lines on companies you are willing to support. That's for you to decide. As a game, I think its gameplay can become trivialized and has enough bugs that in my experience it did bleed into affecting my general opinion. Zaum should have taken a similar approach to the Opera did with Cascade and spent more time in the freezer here. But if you do end up getting Zero Parades, I think you will have a good time with it. It's deeply inspired by Disco Elysium, but it's also got its own distinct identity. It's a game I couldn't put down. I always wanted to have one more conversation, follow one more lead. The cast is memorable. Zero Parade's fate might end up being cursed due to some social network type beat actions of Zaum leadership, but beyond the erratic messes, there's a brilliant game. I'll end on a quote. There are likely to be 0 people attending these parades when the dead Muppet is living for Spies.